What's good, everyone? Matt here from UK Nets Fans, and I'm joined, as ever, by Ada McConaughey and Cammy Anderson for another episode of BK to UK, the British Brooklyn Nets podcast. On this episode, we'll be recapping last week's doubleheader at the Bucks, as well as the game against Dallas, evaluating our drop down the table, James Harden potentially coming back pre-playoffs, your listener questions, and much, much more. Make sure you're following us on Twitter and Instagram at UK Nets Fans, the pod itself on Twitter at BK2UK Pod, and check us out on YouTube where you can watch all of our episodes. We're also now streaming live on Twitch, so head over to twitch.tv/UK Nets Fans and you can join us there too. But with that out of the way, let's get into it. And lads, it's been a bit of a week, isn't it? I'm trying not to be dramatic. I'm trying to stay positive. But we are on the worst run of form we've had all season. 4 games losing on the spin. We obviously last week we were talking about kind of coming in and securing that 1 seed and, getting some wins on us and ramping up some momentum before playoff time. And it's gone the other way. What have you made about this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a bit brutal, and I think it's fair to say because we've been winning so much, it hurts to lose, because when you're not used to it for that long, then you just get into a frame of mind when you're used to winning, and then you get a bundle of losses like that, and it sometimes feels like the world is collapsing in on you. And we were talking this week going, is there going to be any good news stories at all for us to talk about? Luckily, James Harden came along and saved the day, which we'll talk about later on. But apart from that, yeah, it's been very, very bleak.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really kind of miserable week. I think last week we all said it was going to be a really tough week, perhaps the toughest week of the season. And yeah, I think it really has proven to be that. We have lost kind of all 3 of the games since we last podcasted. And I think it's a tough one because we only lost by a few points, but I don't know if that makes it better or worse. It's just, it's been an odd old week in Nets world.
Yeah, I think it's just the contrast, isn't it, between how high we were on the team last week and how we were absolutely rolling, and now a couple of performances against a decent team. I think I'm trying to decide whether or not it was the fact that we lost or the manner in which we lost, where it sort of looked a bit. Obviously, we're going to come to it, but I think there was a couple of questions to be said about sort of effort levels. And stuff like that, which was just a bit annoying. But I haven't even considered what the route to the finals is, or the conference finals would be in this 3rd seed. I don't know if you guys have, but yeah, it's been a bit of a shock to the system, really.
Yeah, I mean, it has. I think we've kind of looked at it, and last week we were saying, if you're not finishing first, you're going to need to face both the Bucks and the Sixers. And as things stand, that's going to be the case, provided we obviously get through the kind of first round matchup, whoever that's going to be. Obviously, plenty of teams kind of in around that area who we could come up against. And yeah, whether it's the best way to go, beating kind of the best 2 teams on the way and kind of showing, we just kind of like you get the 1st and 2nd seed. We're just playing with you. Like, I don't know it, but it's. I don't know if I'd say I'm worried. I think we will get onto it a bit more, but it has certainly been a bit of a disappointing week compared to the one we maybe expected.
Yeah, I think the whole, obviously, dropping to the 3rd seed, I'm not overly bothered. I think we all knew it was one of those situations that the easiest situation was always going to be finishing first and getting that really nice playoff route. I mean, obviously, finishing 3rd, it's still the same scenario where we're going to have to end up playing both the Bucks and the Sixers. The only kind of key change, if we were to finish there, is that obviously the Bucks get home court advantage. How much you want to look into that, you can if you want. But at the end of the day, I would hope that a healthy Nets team wouldn't have to take 7 games to beat the Bucks. You'd think that they would beat them before that, but who knows? It could change quite a lot down the bottom as well as to who we play first. So there's still, it sounds crazy because we literally only got 1 week of basketball left, but so much could change, and we just need to wait and see. But yeah, we've not made it easy for ourselves this week, I don't think.
No, it's a bit of a weird one. I don't know if you guys have kind of picked up on it as well, but there's been a bit of chat with it sort of seemingly the Nets didn't really it looked like we kind of were taking these a bit in our stride, and it feels like the sort of thought around the Nets at the moment is, we'll turn it on the playoffs. We'll turn it on when James Harden comes back. And I know we were kind of chatting about it with the guys at Talking Nets. Shout out to Keith and Hudson. It just comes off a bit arrogant and a bit sort of, I don't know, it's just a bit cocksure. I don't know how else to describe it, but what do you guys think of that kind of thing? Is it a bit just weird?
Yeah, I mean, I listened to Talking Nets as well when they were talking about it, and I think what Keith was saying, he was bang on. He kind of came on Twitter the next day saying I was having a bit of a moment there, and maybe I wasn't saying it correctly, but I agree with him. I think he was right. I think in terms of the regular season, it could certainly come off as arrogant, especially considering obviously this is the first season that the Nets have played together with this team. I mean, I think it would make total sense if you say the Nets came off winning the championship last year. I think it'd be completely different because the team would already play together. But yeah, the guys have obviously only played 7 games together, the big three. And yeah, I think it just goes back to as well when they were saying, well, they didn't say it directly, but it was coming out in the media that if this was the playoffs that Kevin Durant would be playing, he still would be sitting out. That could come off as disrespectful or foolish at times even. Obviously, probably not in their eyes because health's always been their number one priority. We know that for a fact. They always say health when it comes to these players. And fair enough, if that's the way they want to go about it, that's absolutely fine. However, obviously kind of making our playoff route even harder by dropping crucial games against Philly and the Bucks where we've obviously lost the advantage against both of them. And then some of the other games where we've dropped where we really could have won them quite easily if we say we did play KD. But yeah, I'm not going to have a go at the Nets for obviously prioritising health. But yeah, it could come off as foolish to a lot of people, maybe not arrogant, but foolish if they end up going into a playoff series with the Bucks and the Sixers and ended up regretting it. I don't think that's going to happen personally, but it's certainly made things much more difficult by the way they've went about the regular season. And yeah, I hope they don't regret it.
I think to a degree, arrogance is needed, especially when you consider the players we've got. You've kind of got to have that belief. Maybe belief is a better word opposed to arrogance, but when you've got kind of 3 of the top, 10, 15 players in the league, you've got to be going out there thinking, yeah, we can beat them, we can do this, we can do that. If you're not, what are you doing on the team kind of thing? I know that's maybe a really big exaggeration, but we're a team with championship aspirations. You're wanting to kind of have that kind of arrogance and perhaps confidence. Maybe in this situation, it could be kind of confused between the two. It's quite maybe a fine line. There has certainly been some instances where I think we've not had the foot on the gas the whole time and it's let us down, end the games where it's been tight and we've kind of blown it, or games where we could have just really flown away and made it so easy for ourselves and then just take the foot off the gas and kind of let them creep back in. So I think there has been a bit of arrogance, but I think that it's also been needed just as much at the same time. I think it's one of those things you need if you want to be a winning team.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's going to be one of those decisions that's going to define Steve Nash's first season as a head coach, really. But I guess the ultimate question is, do you think we can turn it on and everything will be all right in the playoffs?
Yes. Well, I certainly hope so anyway. I mean, I think it largely depends on the health of the team. It's easy enough for us to sit here and go, yeah, we'll turn it on. But, I mean, let's be honest, as we've already said in this podcast, we're 10 minutes in, and we've already said that we've not really seen the big three play even 10 games yet. So to kind of just imagine they'll immediately hit it off. I mean, in the games that they did play together, it certainly looked promising. But then I think it's quite difficult. A healthy Nets is certainly a very scary team for anyone to face. A battered and bruised Nets, I don't quite think I can say the same, although still a very, very scary team to come up against if you're talking two of the 3 scary hours available or what have you. But yeah, if we're fully healthy, I don't see any reason why I shouldn't be able to turn it up. These are players who should be able to kind of get their level up anyway, and I'd like to think the rest of the team can kind of find an extra level as well. Maybe this goes back to the arrogance thing. Maybe we have kind of not been playing to our full potential, just kind of doing enough to get us there, and then we know what's to come. Maybe this could kind of work in our favour. Teams will maybe go, right, that's their kind of level, and we'll maybe shock them. I don't know. I'm maybe just thinking that with my kind of net specs on, but yeah, it's certainly an interesting situation we find ourselves in.
Yeah, I mean, look, these guys have all done it individually on their past respective teams. They've already done it, and yeah, I mean, the Nets have obviously, the big three have only played 7 games together, but it's almost being reported at times like these guys are complete strangers and they don't spend any time together. They have played minutes together, and you're not telling me they're not practicing together. I reckon, obviously, kind of Harden must have been scrimmaging with the Nets for the last week if he's saying that he's playing next week. And you've got to think with what was coming about at KD, he's probably doing the exact same thing for a couple of weeks before he came back. So they have played together in practice. And I know it's not the same thing, but I think if Harden comes back next week, I certainly think that should give them enough time to get into a little bit of rhythm. I certainly would have wanted them to play more, but I'm still confident that they can go in. Would have I preferred if they had an easier first round matchup to go and get their errors out of the way nice and early? Yeah, I probably would have preferred that, but that's not going to happen now, and we're just going to have to run with what we got. And I think all of these guys can come in and turn it on early doors and do the job. So yeah, I don't think it'll take long at all. I think there will be a few niggling errors kind of early on, but as long as they're all healthy, I think they can go out there and do the job against anyone.
Yeah, the thing that would be an absolute kick in the teeth if someone, after all the, what is it, the 3 R's, it was rest, ramp ups and minutes restrictions. So after all of this, if someone did actually wind up just getting one of these freak injuries that would do them out in the playoffs, it just like this whole thing has been for nothing. But enough negativity. It's all going to be fine. It'll all be all right on the night. And yeah, we're just going to have to see how it goes because this is the position the Nets team are in. And, you know, third isn't bad, you know, still home court, but we shall see. But moving on, so to some good news, actually. Cammy, I'll come to you first on this, but this week, James Harden has said he is very confident that he'll return before the playoffs. How does that make you feel, and do you believe him?
Also, it's fantastic. I think in the interviews, watched it, and kind of some of the journalists were kind of push him, and he was kind of say, "Oh, you're trying to catch him out with that one there or whatever." I don't think he'd have said it for the sake of saying it just to make fans feel good. Obviously, we know how cautious we are as a team. If we get 1 or 2 games of Harden before, I think that's absolutely fantastic. And he's been out for a few weeks. This is one of the most durable players that the league has kind of seen for, the last decade. He's not someone who really gets injured. And whilst he'll certainly not have lost anything from a basketball perspective, at least I hope not, certainly in terms of kind of general fitness, kind of match fitness, he's going to need a few games to ramp that up. And I'd prefer that we ramp it up in some meaningless kind of games at the end of the season where maybe the seedings are already sorted, rather than try and ramp them up at the start of the playoffs and maybe drop a game early on in the playoffs, because when it comes to playoff basketball, you can't really make mistakes. Whereas at the end of the season, if we're kind of stuck in that third seed, can't go any higher, let Harden kind of get rid of the minutes restrictions as best as we possibly can, let him kind of get back up, and then can wait and see what kind of goes from there. But certainly I think we need Harden to have had a few games before the playoffs comes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important enough that Harden comes back that an uber cautious Nets performance team have decided that it's important enough for him to come back and play a couple of games before the playoffs. And I think that shows themselves that the Nets think that it's really important that he does come back and play a bit just to get a feel for the game before going in. I mean, we've talked about it all season that obviously the playoffs are a completely different beast, and every single player that's in there do elevate their game to a different level. And it's extremely tough for anyone to go in playing no competitive basketball at all to going into a playoff setting. And it would have been a slight risk for the Nets to do so, I think you're bang on, Cammy. I think his durability is so important, and the fact that we've had him out for such a long stretch, we've seen him, we've suffered due to that reason. And I think if you watch the last 4 games or so, I think we can firmly say that James is the most important player on this team. And I was listening to the Brooklyn Buzz recently. I was listening to Jack and Nick on their last pod, and they were talking about, obviously Kevin Durant is the best player in this team, But Harden is definitely the most important player in this team just because of how he elevates the rest of the guys around him. I mean, you just need to look at Joe Harris, Kyrie, Claxton, and Bruce Brown. You could even say DeAndre Jordan. He certainly elevates his game when he's on the court. And because we're a better team with him, we suffer when he's not there. And the rest of these guys that we've been talking about for such a long time, because they've elevated their game when James Harden's there, and they've made our bench unit so much better. It's suffered a bit. So yeah, I just can't wait to get him back in there, and hopefully we do see that lift that we saw when he first came in.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's more keen to get James Harden back. Is it Nets fans or is it James Harden himself? Because he looks absolutely chomping at the bit to come back and play some basketball. You can see him on the bench, kind of sort of in the team talks and in the timeouts, and even just sort of talking to the bench guys as the play's going on. He's obviously been on this road trip, even though he's not suiting up. But yeah, so I think he is obviously very, very keen to get back. But I was wondering if him saying, I am very confident I'm going to come back before the playoffs, is him almost putting the Nets organization in a bit of a position where they would probably be quite into him sort of staying out into the playoffs and just wrap him up in cotton wool a little bit. But now he said that, it almost feels like he really should be playing. So maybe it's him just kind of pulling the strings a little bit and throwing his weight around in a really, really good way. But yeah, we shall see. I really hope that Harden comes back soon, because as you guys right, it's kind of, he absolutely makes his team better. I think he's our most important player. He gets everyone else involved, everything that you guys were just saying. So yeah, please come back soon, James Harden, but we shall see. Aidan, you had a quick note about a couple of comments that Steve Nash has been saying about the lineups and this season. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, obviously it wasn't just the James Harden press conference that was making the news this week. Steve Nash said something really interesting that caught my eye, that I wanted to see what your guys' answer would be to this one. He came out and he said, he was basically talking about getting guys back, James Harden back and whatnot. And he said, we've not even seen our best lineup play this season yet. So it got me thinking, not who do you think is the best five-man lineup for the Nets? Who do you think Steve Nash believes is the best five-man lineup on this Nets team?
What do you reckon, Cammy?
I mean, we've had, 35 unique lineups or something like that. So, I mean, I don't think he really knows. And trying to think of a kind of unique one from the players we've got, it's a difficult task. Just in terms of who I'd want, I know that's not quite the question, but you've got to think it's Harden, Kai, KD, Harris, and probably Griffin now, given the way he's coming and made an impact. I'm trying to rack my brain and think, have these guys actually played together? Did Griffin get a few games before Harden went down, and did they all play together? Like, I honestly can't even think, but I'd say that's certainly our best starting five. Whether Nash agrees, I don't know, but certainly he's someone who you can't fault for trying things, but you'd like to think at the kind of business end of the season, he'd have already kind of sussed this team out. He's saying he's not, obviously, I'm saying he should have sussed out. He maybe has sussed out. He's had to deal with lots of injuries. Let's not forget that. It's a very kind of difficult situation I think he finds himself in. As much as he's had a kind of fantastic first season in charge as an NBA head coach, he's been dealt some awful cards at times, and it's a really kind of difficult position to put a rookie coach in when he's not he's claiming we've not had the best starting five, and he's maybe only going to get that in the playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see if he's ever going to announce who that best starting five is when it comes to it, and probably not. But yeah, it'll just be real interesting to see. Thankfully, we've also got Mike D'Antoni, a really experienced head. They have tons of experienced coaching staff, and you'd like to think that they'll be able to coach Nash through this situation, which I think could be really key in the playoffs, actually. I think if we bring out what he thinks is the best starting lineup and it's not the best starting lineup, then there's going to certainly be questions asked, and D'Antoni and all these other assistants are really going to need to kind of muck in and help Nash solve the kind of lineup conundrum. I think we called, was it a lineup roulette the other week? We called it the week before. So yeah, there's certainly some problems to be solved, and hopefully with injuries clearing up now, we might see that best starting five.
So I've gone the same as you. It's got to be Scary Hours plus Joey Buckets plus Blake Griffin. I think if you play, you need a bit of a bruiser kind of front court with KD, and I think I'm gonna get to this when I talk about the Bucks games, but it feels like we're a bit too finesse as a team, and we need a bit more power. So I think Blake Griffin brings that in that first lineup. So that's what I've gone for there. But the Nets' most used 5-man lineup this season is Bruce Brown, James Harden, Joe Harris, Kyrie, and DJ. Obviously, with KD sort of missing a load of time, but I was surprised to see Bruce Brown in there so much. But obviously, he does, because he's so fantastic at what he does. It's been annoying that we've not seen him, especially a little bit more this week. But yeah, I think it's got to be those guys for playoffs. They've all obviously had incredible playoff experience. Obviously, I want to use this opportunity to say that Joe Harris has faltered a little bit over the last week or so. Something that I know sometimes we get a little bit told off for not acknowledging when Joe Harris is having a bit of a bad run of form, but there you go. But he's still undeniably, a top 3-point shooter in the league. And then obviously the big three are the big three, and I've spoken about Blake. But what did you think about that one, Aidan?
Yeah, I think you guys are probably right. I mean, I still think that Nash is intrigued as to what a Harden, Kyrie, Durant, Blake and Claxton lineup could do. I think that front court could do a lot of damage, and we've seen already that they're probably one of the best defensive front courts that we can put out there at the moment, especially due to Claxton's switching qualities, and obviously Blake, the fact that he can draw charges off of anyone in the league is underrated, and obviously he is leading the league in taking charges, but it's been important at times, and I think the fact that he's willing to put his body on the line is really important. I don't think that DeAndre Jordan certainly will be in Nash's top 5 lineups. I think he's just using them out of need at the moment. But yeah, I mean, that lineup of Harden, Kyrie, Durant, Blake and Claxton, that could be his best one. I quite like that idea, just purely because you get the firepower off the bench of Harris and Shamet. I still like this idea of Joe Harris coming off the bench potentially, and they could vary when they bring him into the game to throw teams off, because you could bring him in, say, after 6 minutes in the first, and he could shoot lights out because they're not preparing for a 3-pointer of that quality to come on. So yeah, I think if you were to blend the offensive and defensive qualities that we've got, I think a Harden, Kyrie, Durant, Blake, Claxton, that's a winning formula in my opinion, and I can't wait to see some minutes from that, because I think it'll be quite good fun as well.
Oh boy, we need to unleash 33, man. We need to get him in. A 22-year-old man who obviously has just been confirmed now that he did have COVID. Let me find a tweet. Brian Lewis says on Twitter from the New York Post, Nick Claxton had tested positive for COVID-19, but was asymptomatic. He had to quarantine in Miami. So probably the worst kept secret in Nets world at the moment. But, nice to have that confirmed. So a couple of other things that have gone on in Nets world this week. The Nets are planning on signing Mike James for the rest of the season, according to Eurohoops, which I think obviously we spent a bit of time last week talking about Mike James and how he's looking pretty solid. So, I don't think we've got any beef on that. Spencer Dinwiddie saying he's set a record for ACL recovery. Obviously, there's no one that's watching this that doesn't follow Spencer Dinwiddie on socials. I failed to believe that, but yeah, he's obviously so good on that, and he's his own biggest fan, which I absolutely love about the man. And he's obviously doing incredibly well. And then Kyrie and the Nets are both fined $35,000 each for violating media access rules, and Kyrie not talking to the media. Obviously, he's spent a bit of time talking to the media. He's chosen not to. Maybe this is him just kind of saying, nah, you're all right. And $35,000 for him is not a good sort of, not a big lot of money. But is there any bits of those that sort of jump out to you guys just before we get into these game recaps?
Probably the Kyrie fine again. Just the money is about 60 or 70 grand over the course of the season now. Now, as you say, it's pocket change to him, but I think all three of us look at that and go, I wouldn't want to be fined 70 grand. I wouldn't want to be giving that up. Like, it's a crazy amount. And I think we've spoken tons. I think initially we were maybe a bit unsure on it. I think it has become clear that Kyrie really does have his reasons for not wanting to speak to the media. We still don't know if it's a specific member of the media or what it is. But yeah, if he's willing to take the fine for it, let it be, kind of thing. If he's going to take it that seriously, that he's going to take the fine, yeah, obviously there's something that serious in it that we've just kind of got to accept it and let him get on with things.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of thinking about the Mike James signing. Obviously, there was a bit of talk from Euro Hoops initially when they were the first ones to announce that he was going to sign with the Nets, and a lot of the American reporters were doubting that slightly, and then it ended up becoming true. So I would probably take that one for gospel that the Nets are planning on doing that. I mean, am I that bothered that Mike James is signing for the rest of the season? Probably with the Harden news coming out, probably not. I think he's purely there for insurance reasons, just in case the worst happens, basically, and we do drop down again a point guard or two. But I don't expect him to see many minutes. But yeah, fair enough. If with the effort he's put in, I think he's been hot and cold at times. I think he was good when he first came in. I have seen some moments where I've not been that impressed. I'd rather have Tyler Johnson in there, but yeah, for having someone like that in there for the rest of the season, it doesn't do any harm. So it's probably too late to find someone else now as well.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's just that well has run dry for replacement players when you're a week out from the playoffs. But yeah, I think you're quite right. I think it's weird that TJ is obviously maybe he's getting wrapped up in cotton wool as well, and we're just gonna play these people that are never going to get around into the playoff rotation just before the playoffs. But we shall see. But yeah, so that's the news in brief. So now the time has come to talk about all these L's that we've been handed this season. Obviously, we started off on Sunday against the Bucks, and that's on you again, Aidan.
Yeah, I mean, this one felt like a long time ago, but it was actually less than a week ago that we were sitting here confident as anything in our pre-game live pod that the Nets were going to take the W in that game. How wrong we were, but yeah, the Nets
was it our
lost.
fault? Do you think it was our fault?
No, I don't think so. I think there's probably a few reasons why we lost that one, but I'm not blaming us for that one. But yeah, 117, 114. I don't know about you guys. Would you call it a very beatable Bucks team on that night? I'd say so. I think we probably could have taken it in quite a few occasions. Obviously for the Nets, Kevin Durant was the main man, 42 points. And he was on fire in the first three quarters. Unfortunately, his shooting went off a wee bit in the fourth, and ended up obviously missing that 3-point attempt to tie the game at the end. Which, to be fair to Durant, was a tough one. I mean, he was obviously at risk of getting fouled. He did get an open look somehow. I don't know how he managed to do that, but it just didn't drop, and it wasn't meant to be. But yeah, unfortunately, on the other end, which has been talked about so much, was the fact that Durant's 42 points were cancelled out by a 49-point outing from Giannis, which he must have came out licking his lips from minute one when he saw that DeAndre Jordan was going to be guarding him. No offense to DJ, but someone like Giannis has to be coming out and seeing that matchup, and he must be absolutely delighted. But the Nets obviously think that's the best matchup for Giannis at the moment, which is fine. But yeah, DJ let Giannis kind of chance his arm from three all night, which was a bit of a trigger for a lot of Nets fans. And yeah, he obviously went 4 from 8 and went 50% from deep. Personally, I think if you're, yeah, okay, yeah, there you go. I was being a wee bit politer than that, but that's fair enough. But I mean, personally, I think if the Nets are gonna let someone like that shoot, they make 2 of them, then you have to guard them. You've one, maybe an off one, but they make the second one, you have to get out there and guard them. Nash came out afterwards and said, we can live with Giannis shooting those. I didn't like that at all. An easy 12 points, which were completely preventable and would have won us the game if they ended up going out there and marking him. So that was that one. Obviously, you mentioned earlier, Matt, about Joe Harris. I'll just quickly mention that he was poor in this one. 1 of 5 from 3 in 35 minutes. And yeah, the Nets have been running less plays for Joe Harris recently. I don't know if it's potentially down to Harden not being in there, that it just doesn't work as well. But yeah, he is you can just look at the games and his shooting numbers are still decent, but he has had quite a number of quiet games recently, which is disappointing. But yeah, finally, just the main talking point from this one was obviously we managed to keep a Bucks team whose big three scored 93 points. to a 3-point deficit. And you've got to think, if we did have James Harden in there, we would have definitely won this one, probably comfortably as well. And unfortunately, when you do look back at the end of the regular season, which we'll be doing next week, you do just see that loss and what it means to the Nets, and it does make things a bit more difficult, the fact that we don't have the tiebreak against the Sixers or the Bucks now. And yeah, we probably could have won this one, and it was a lot of errors that were preventable, which is frustrating. But at the end of the day, yeah, we lost this one, and we've just got to move on.
Yeah, I've likened DeAndre Jordan trying to close out on the perimeter to just someone looking at their phone trying to like flag down a bus, because that's the kind of energy he's got. He's just kind of like, yeah, well, yeah, cheers, mate. And it's just, if you're quite right, if they make Giannis is gonna, the main way he's gonna hurt you is by steamrolling through you and dunking it, and that's his bread and butter. That's what he's incredible at. So I understand the thought process of like, well, we'll get him to shoot threes. He's not as efficient at shooting threes, so that's what we'll do. That's the game plan. And you quite rightly say, Aiden, well, if he starts making them, you need to change your game plan, because, you know, 2 points is better than 3 at the end of the day. So it was just like the lack of sort of changing it up and just accepting him having his way from deep. But, you know, unfortunately, it didn't really stop. It didn't really abate. We had that game was on Sunday. We had Monday off to sort of think about what we did. We came out on Tuesday. I think it was a bit better, even though the scoreline wasn't as good, but I think the performance was somewhat better. It still ended up in a loss. We lost 118 to 124. But let's start with the good stuff and get that out of the way, because unfortunately there was still plenty of not good stuff to talk about in this one. Kyrie just continues to have incredibly efficient, high output, high volume games. He had 38 points, 5 assists, 3 steals, and 2 blocks. Whereas KD also turned up. He had 32 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 steal. Both players actually played 40 minutes in this game, which is great. Well, it's great that they're not on minutes restrictions, but you know, that it should be a bit more of a team effort, I think, on this one. But the Nets were actually leading going into the fourth. But then the Bucks went on that run, 18-1 run, which put them up by 9 with about 5 minutes to go. The Nets missed some threes. We turned the ball over in clutch moments, which meant the Bucks went on to win the second game of the series. And like you say, tied up the tiebreaker. The weird thing for me and seemingly everyone on Nets Twitter was Steve Nash decided not to call a timeout during that fourth quarter because, and he said in the presser that he wanted to give his team experience in problem solving, which I get. You know, I've read 11 Rings by Phil Jackson, the Zen master. He's done the same thing where he refuses to call a timeout and that the team just kind of have to work it out for themselves. But for me, it's like, save that for earlier on in the season. Like the team, you can see as a head coach, you know, he'll have Mike D'Antoni in his ear and he'll have Jacque Vaughn in his ear saying like, okay, the Bucks are getting momentum. We just need to put a cork in this for a minute. But for whatever reason, he didn't. Obviously, in the post-match presser, he was kind of like, oh, I suppose I could have done looking back on it. But, you know, I'm not sure if it would have made much of a difference, which I didn't like to hear from a head coach. But yeah, it just felt like a weird strategy with the 1 seed hanging in the balance. And now, obviously, it's out of reach. The Bucks also scored 20 second chance points coming from their dominance on offensive glass. They had 15 offensive rebounds versus the Nets 6. Yeah, I just think it was just stopping that run could have swung this game back. And I wanted, you know, it seems so weird when we start wanting to see these different players, but why Alize Johnson didn't get any meaningful minutes in this game is absolutely beyond me. The guy, when he gets minutes, you know, last game he got decent minutes. He got 20 and 21 or something like that. And if it's rebounds we need, that's what that guy brings us. So I would have loved to have seen a bit of Alize. And yeah, just a frustrating loss against a good team. And that's what, I just think, save Blake Griffin, who, will dive after every loose ball, even though his joints are like a stack full of 10p's on each other at this stage. We're just kind of out-muscled, outworked, out-hustled. And yeah, I just think we need to find a bit more Brooklyn grit, But yeah, that was it. And we leave Milwaukee 0-2 in this current stretch.
I mean, yeah, it certainly wasn't the way we wanted these games to go. I think this was a game that I think we maybe pinpointed as one that would give us a bit of a taster for a potential playoff series against them. And yes, the games did kind of finish closely. If Harden's back, you're going to imagine these are different games, but you're still wanting to win them, obviously, for the sake of the tiebreaker and stuff like that. But unfortunately, we didn't manage to kind of snap the losing streak, as you said at the top of the show, Matt. A full match losing streak this week, our first this season. And when you think about it, it's not too bad. It's only one this season when you consider that awful losing streak that Houston had earlier on when it was 19 or 20 losses in a row. It's like, I think we can consider ourselves quite lucky, but like Aidan said, when you get used to winning, losses hurt, and I don't think we can get too carried away with it. It's one of those things we've just got to bounce back as quickly as we can. It's try and get that second seed. I think that would get us home advantage. So try and get that. But if not, we know we're going to face the Sixers and the Bucks most likely, provided we get past the first round, like I said. So yeah, this one was another narrow loss, and one that was just really frustrating. The game was pretty much neck and neck the whole time up until about the midway point of the fourth, and the Mavs just kind of got and I think it was a few possessions ahead at that point, and it was just kind of got us a wee bit out of reach from them. Kyrie, kind of near the end, I think there's about 20 seconds left, airballed a layup, obviously very uncharacteristic of him. Granted, a few seconds later they did sink a free, but you can't help but wonder if he'd finished that layup, I think it would have brought the gap at the time down to 3 or 4 points. So I mean, we could have looked at a completely different game with a few seconds to go. But yeah, obviously, I've just kind of criticising there, but Kyrie was absolutely phenomenal on the night. So maybe I'm being a little harsh on him. 45 points. This man, he just gets better and better. We've obviously seen him drop several 40 pieces this season. And it's a bit of a shame because other than KD, who hit 20, there wasn't anyone who hit more than 11 points in the team. It just seemed a very, very kind of, not one-sided, but kind of like, I don't know what the kind of phrase would be off the top of my head, but it was just the kind of Kyrie show. KD just had a few wee kind of starring moments, and then nobody else really done too much. I think Blake Griffin got 10 and 10, so not the worst return from him. But then you kind of look at other ones like Drew Bucket's just 9 points. Shamet had 0 points in 24 minutes. Claxton and Mike James combined for 4 points, and I think they were both 18 or 19 minutes each. So all in all, it was just one of those games. I think if one or two other guys just kind of managed to turn up. Shamet has obviously been fantastic in recent weeks, but we've seen games like this from him in the past where he plays tons and just doesn't score. And you just think if he was able to maybe score at the rate he was a week or two ago and he was getting kind of your 12, 15 points a night, it's a completely different game again. But it's one of those, I think we need to just move on. The Nuggets, obviously, tonight as we're recording, going to be a very, very difficult game. And we've just got to hope this run ends sooner rather than later. It's not nice to have lost 4 on the bounce, but at the same time, I think, like you were saying, Nash wanted the team to kind of solve problems. I think this is also a kind of lesson in itself. The team haven't lost 4 in a row. They're going to now kind of need to realise, right, we're not wanting to make this 5, not wanting to make it 6. Because then I think that's when morale probably takes a bit of a hit and they go, why a week ago were we smashing teams and now we can't beat such and such? So yeah, a very disappointing week, I think, is the easiest way we can sum this last week up. And the sooner we move on from talking about it, the better, I think.
Yeah, nice. I think that's a nice way to put it in perspective. It's just like, it's 4 games across a whole stretch. Every team's going to go through their dips. It's obviously not ideal that it goes straight into the playoffs. But, sometimes you need to be humbled and you'll come back and, you'll have that taste of getting beat still in your mouth while you still you go into playing those games that actually mean something and actually get us closer to these finals which we want to go to. That's awesome. So that's all the games. It was only 3 games to cover off. It seems with games coming so thick and fast, it's been a couple of pods since we've just had to do the 3. So Nice, easy slate for us there, despite the L's. But we're going to go on to listener questions. Big thanks to everyone in the Discord. Obviously, chat to you guys all week, but thank you very much. If you're a UK-based Nets fan, you're listening to this, and you want to get in touch and chat with, I think we're approaching 50 people in this Discord server. Shoot me a DM. We'll get you an invite link. I've had a couple of new invites come in this week already. So we've had a couple of questions that are sort of similar. So we've had one from Brooklyn Yets saying, should we be worried after a stretch of 4 defeats, even though we have had injuries, especially so close to the playoffs? And Sam from Discord says, should we be worried? Also, is James Harden actually the answer? What if he doesn't come back fully fit and firing? So I want to roll those up together today. Obviously, we've spoken a lot about these losses and what they mean, but obviously we're going to kind of go through with the next listener question that we're going to hold on to. But what happens if James Harden does stay out? Who do you think kind of needs to step up in these kind of next few games to really kind of steady the ship?
I think it's quite important, actually. It's a good point that you make there, Matt. I think there's a lot of one thing that you need to take into account, that the fact that Harden's coming back in is that he's probably going to be building up to playing 40 minutes a game. So there's been players in there that are been covering his minutes at the moment. We've seen a range of them. We've seen TLC, we've seen Alize Johnson, we've seen Mike James, we've seen Tyler Johnson, we've seen Landry Shamet getting more minutes. These guys need to step up and prove that they want to be a part of this playoff rotation, because there's probably only going to be, say, one of them that are going to get in there because there's just not enough minutes. So yeah, that's really interesting. So I'd say everyone, to give a bold answer, needs to step up in the next few games to prove themselves that they want to be a part of this playoff rotation. And I mean, in terms of what the guys are asking, in terms of being worried, we've obviously touched on it. Personally, I think that Harden announcement was going to come one way or another. They were either going to say that he is going to be coming back, or that he wouldn't have been ready for the start of the playoffs. And that would have been the decision if I was going to be worried or if I wasn't going to be worried. Because at the end of the day, the fact that Harden is back and he's coming back in a couple of games' time means that I'm not worried at all, actually. And yeah, as Sam obviously said, is Harden the answer? Go back and watch the last 4 games and you'll see that Harden's definitely the answer. I was thinking to myself, I had a really cheesy tweet that I was going to say the Nets have 99 problems and James Harden sorts 97 of them because he's not able to release TLC and DeAndre Jordan. But I thought it was a bit harsh, and I was like, no, I'm not going to tweet that. But yeah, I think he definitely is the answer in terms of the fact that I said earlier. It does make everyone better. And the fact that Sam said as well, is he going to come back fully fit and firing? He's definitely going to come back firing. We know he's going to come in and he's going to be important to this team, even if he's not scoring, because he'll make other guys better. Fully fit, I mean, are you telling me that the performance team are going to put out a semi-healthy James Harden after he went down after 5 minutes in the last time? Not a chance in hell will they send him out if he's not 110%. So I think you'll see a fully healthy James Harden come back, and I think he'll be impactful straight away.
I mean, yeah, I think that's a must if we really want to get ourselves back on track. I'm not going to go so far to say a season's been derailed. As we've just said, it's been 4 games. It's been a bit rubbish. We haven't really had any runs like that for a good few months. I think the last kind of losing streak was a 3-game losing streak back in February, where was it the Raptors, the Sixers, and the Pistons, if I'm right. So yeah, I mean, it's Harden in the team. We're undoubtedly a better team. He raises the game of everyone. We've seen Harden play some different styles. We've seen some kind of Houston Harden, but we've also seen a Harden who gives up scoring plenty of points to just give the ball to his teammates to score. Obviously, as we said earlier on, DeAndre Jordan is a better player than him. Joe Harris is, and yeah, he just raises the game of everyone. And as to if I'm worried to an extent, I think it's only natural to be a little worried after losing 4 games. You never want to see a team kind of lose games and go on a streak. But as you rightly said, Matt, over the course of a season, a 4-game losing streak, the timing of it's maybe not ideal. It maybe would have been better kind of at the start of the season. Not that a kind of streak like this is ever a good one to have, but I kind of said earlier, just reiterating my point, if we get kind of 2 stuck onto this and too worried, I think that's when it becomes a serious problem. It's not a serious problem at the moment. We're still not ruled out from kind of finishing on a better seed. So long as that's the kind of case, let's not take the foot off the gas. Let's just kind of start over again. We can go again. We know that we can beat teams. We kind of know what we're capable of, and it's just one of those things we say every week: injuries, injuries, injuries. I'm going to throw out another curveball here, and I think this is a completely different conversation, but like, part of me just wonders, we've been completely dazzled by Harden, but what if Harden hadn't actually come to the team? Like, you can't help but wonder. I think there was a kind of stat going round of the record with Harden, the record without, and I mean, it's staggering the difference. And like, could you like Karis LeVert, Jarrett Allen have made a difference and kind of got those similar wins? I highly doubt it, but you never really know, because they were kind of some of those guys who had that Brooklyn grit that we've kind of missed it sometimes this season. But yeah, I think I say it quite a lot in the podcast, a very interesting situation. And Harden, it goes without saying, is, I don't think I said it earlier, probably the most important player on the team, even if maybe not the best, kind of like what Aidan said, KD the best player, Harden the most important.
Absolutely. I think we're all in agreement on that. I think my thoughts on this were, we've had a couple of games, during this stretch where I think you said it, Aidan, we've had a couple of guys that sort of for the season have shot 45, 50% from three who have gone cold. They're gonna bounce back. Hopefully they bounce back sooner or later. Obviously talking about Joe Harris and Landry Shamet, but James Harden coming back makes those people feel better, play better and feel better. I don't know, got a bit spiritual there, but makes them play better. They're going to get the ball where they need it. I think I saw a stat where Joe Harris, obviously being one of the better 3-point shooters in the league, he's like one of the elite catch and shoot 3-point shooters as well. So just point him out there and just give him the ball when he's in his spot and watch it go in. But yeah, I think it all will come good. I think I've felt this has been very cathartic for me. This has been a very sort of a nice experience emotionally for me talking to you guys. I feel a lot better. But yeah, we got one more. Obviously, we are streaming live. So if you guys are watching this on Twitter or Twitch or YouTube, make sure you drop your comments in below and we'll get to your questions if we see them while we still got time. Paul from our Discord saying the big three have not played much together. Who would be your preferred big two out of the big three? This is very interesting because obviously you can either have KD and Kyrie, KD and James Harden, or Harden and Kyrie. I know which one I reckon, but what do you guys think?
I think part of me thinks we're going to all be kind of in the same boat here. Might be wrong though. I'll probably be the odd one out here, but I'm saying KD and Harden. I think my comments on the podcast tonight, I've made that quite clear that would obviously not that people would know this question was coming up, but I think looking back and hearing the question, I think folk would have thought it was quite obvious. KD, one of the best players of the past decade, perhaps of all time. I don't think I'd be stretching it too far saying that. Has multiple rings, and you just can't not include KD in the team. Picking between Harden and Kyrie, certainly a difficult choice. Kyrie, obviously we know what Kyrie can bring. I think there's also the kind of, he's a local lad. You want to see kind of one of your own do it kind of thing like that. But then Harden, as we've just kind of said, he's the most important team. He's probably just edging it for me for the sake of his durability. Obviously injured in recent weeks, but over the kind of course of the past decade or whatever, he's been very durable. Kyrie is historically known to have lots of injuries, and if it came down to it in the playoffs, I'd rather have both KD and Harden available to me and know that Harden's probably going to be there now every night, unlike Kyrie, who could pick a wee niggle here and he'll miss a few games. That said, Kyrie also has a ring, Harden doesn't. So how do you, like, it's just one of those things that do you base it day by day, depending on the matchup? It's such a difficult question. I think I would say KD and Harden for now, but that could change really, really quickly.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with you, Cammy. I'd look into it two ways. It is a tough question because Kyrie is so good and he is extremely important to this team and what we have right now. But if you were to think of it as if we were to go into the playoffs tomorrow and only two of the big three could be healthy, who would you want in that team and who would you be most confident with going into those playoff games? And I think it would be Harden and KD, just purely because, I mean, you could easily say Kyrie, but I'd say Harden just purely from what we've seen this season. He's won multiple games for this team by himself, I'd say. I'd go as far as saying that. It's not by himself, but he's got it over the line for us. And yeah, it's just he's just a different level. And I think as well at the same time, you just need to look at who's had the biggest impact on winning games for us this year. Again, you'd say it's Harden and KD. Kyrie's obviously great scoring numbers, but Harden makes guys better. And at the end of the day, KD as well. He's just one of the best shooters of all time, if not the best shooter of all time. You'd be stupid not to have him in your team if you could get him. So luckily we're getting to go into the playoffs with all three of them. But if I was to pick two of them, we'll go with that. But it'll probably change tomorrow.
I mean, unsurprisingly, I've gone for the same. So I'm going to try and on the fly change up my answer, and I'm going to say Harden and Kyrie. I'm going to say, throughout this incredible run we had, that the West Coast road trip, we had 8 on the bounce. We had our own win streak. I think that the majority of that was when KD was out. Harden and Kyrie have obviously played incredibly well together. Best backcourt in the NBA, in my opinion. Ever since you're the shooting guard, I'm the point guard conversation. Just surround them with shooters, get Clax involved. Blake Griffin can sort of go in the paint as well. Harden and DJ, like we've said, have got some kind of incredible chemistry where it looks like DeAndre Jordan is prime DeAndre Jordan at times. And James Harden will give DJ an absolute bollocking if he needs to when he's on the court, so which is always handy. But yeah, realistically, big shout out to Kyrie Irving for this season, though. I think he's had an absolute career year back home in the Nets. So yeah, it's hard to exclude him, but I think when the other two are just that good, it's brutal, but it's realistic, unfortunately. So that's all the listener questions we've had. It's time to look ahead to next week. So we've got, obviously, as we're talking, it is Saturday. So we're going to tip off against the Nuggets very, very soon. Before Tuesday at the Bulls, Wednesday at the Spurs, and then a Saturday, Sunday doubleheader at home against the Bulls again and against the Cavs for the last game of the season. I don't know about you guys. I don't know what to think these days. So how do you guys see this little stretch coming up as we close out the regular season?
Yeah, extremely important, I'd say. And it's not important as such as how we do, because personally, I think potentially this could be how the top three end up at the moment in terms of the East. I think Philly will probably finish first. And with the way the Bucks are playing in their schedule, I can see them holding on to that second spot. So we've just got to go into these ones and build some confidence. And I hope, I was going to mention it earlier, obviously I'm thinking back to that Pistons game where we were obviously on a bit of a losing streak in the middle of the season, where we're kind of not playing very well, and we managed to come out of that one and turn it around, and that's when we went our streak. I hope something like that could happen this week, and there's certainly going to be plenty of opportunities for guys to do so. I'd say tonight it's a really tough one. I'd say the Nuggets are defensively one of the best teams, and they've somehow managed to add Aaron Gordon to that and be even better. And let's face it, the Joker's probably going to come in tonight and have his way with this Nets team, and just because we're not going to be able to put up a resistance enough to stop what he does, and we've just got to hope that the rest of the Nuggets aren't on fire and we can make up the scoring numbers to get the win tonight, because I think he could have a really big night. I expect DeAndre Jordan to start tonight. I think he'll start against the Nuggets, and personally, I think it's starting to seem a bit of a waste of time. I'd rather have Claxton or Blake on him on the Joker tonight. But oh well. Tuesday and Wednesday, I'd expect a couple of wins. You've got to think that Harden's probably going to come back and play against the Spurs, just because we're back home, and the Nets like to do that. They like to bring guys back in when we're at the Barclays Centre. I don't know why, but maybe just in case something goes wrong. So yeah, I'd expect both wins there. I think we'll beat the Bulls quite comfortably. I think the Spurs will be a tough one, but yeah, I think if we have Harden back in there, we shouldn't have too many issues. Saturday and Sunday, it's a weird one because they've not even announced the times yet for the games. It's just like it's to be confirmed. I don't know why. I know there's definitely a reason. I think it might have something to do with the play-in tournament coming up. But yeah, you'd hope that we'd win both of those, but you've got to think if it's potentially wrapped up by then what's going on at the top of the East, that some guys may rest. I don't think Harden will rest. He'll certainly play in one of those games, but you might think that KD and Kyrie might get a bit of rest. Joey Buckets, who's played every game this season, I think. I don't think it'd be too bad an idea, but you'll certainly see the big three play in at least one of those games, I think.
I mean, I think it's certainly a much kinder week than last week. A few kind of, obviously the Nuggets, a fantastic team, and then the Bulls and Spurs and Cavs aren't quite as great as the Bucks and Mavs who we faced, obviously, last week. So 2 back-to-backs isn't ideal to finish the season. I think that's where we could potentially drop games. Obviously, we typically rest players for these back-to-backs. And I'd like to think I'd either mentioned it in the Discord or on one of the recent podcasts about wanting to see them stagger the kind of rest. Rather than have KD and Kyrie both miss a game, have one miss one miss the other. It just makes sense. And I know one of these guys maybe isn't wanting to go out and play 40 minutes and have to do it all himself. But, I mean, you've got to do what you've got to do for the team and stuff. And I think if we can snap a losing streak against the Nuggets, that's fantastic. It'll give us a real boost heading into the kind of final games. But although I'm kind of expecting us to snap this streak at some point, I'm going to say we'll go 3-2 this week.
Nice. Yeah, the Denver one's a funny one. Obviously, the Nets kind of release this Nets notes thing every time we or this kind of almost like a program it looks like, but they kind of give the head-to-head stats. And against Denver, we're actually obviously scoring more points a game, but rebounds, which is obviously something we've been struggling on. They've only they're 0.4 rebounds per game better than us, which bodes well. We're actually close on assists per game as well. So it's closer than you think, but I think it will just be down to execution and cue Aaron Gordon to have a fantastic night against the Brooklyn Nets, as he always does. Hopefully he's left that bad juju in Orlando and he hasn't sort of packed his Nets killer boxes on a move over to Denver. But yeah, Bulls and Spurs, I'd like to sort of beat. Sort of people have said that James Harden's going to come back on this road trip. So it'd be great to get him back for that Bulls and Spurs game. And then, yeah, beat out the Bulls and the Cavs. And, you know, what would be nice after a 4-game losing streak would be a 4-game win streak at the end of the game, at the end of the year. So I'm going to say 4-1 as well, just to round it out. And that's kind of all we got. I'm just having a quick little look around Twitter for anything that's been popping off as we've been recording. Rodion's Kurucs has been waived by the Bucks, which is a bit of a shame. Obviously, was a big fan of Rhodey. Rookie Rhodey was great. And the Magic have signed Dante Hall for the remainder of the season. Obviously, bubble net legend. But yeah, I think that's all we got time for today. Thanks to everyone for coming through, watching on the stream, or listening back to this on a pod. Please subscribe, rate, review wherever you can. Spread the word, share all that kind of good stuff. You can also head to teespring.com/stores/UK Nets fans where you can buy our merch. And yeah, nice one. We'll see you next time.